When we think of the origins of Western literature, the name that most readily comes to mind is Homer, or Homeros as he was known in ancient Greece. For many, Homer represents the beginning, the first and greatest poet. The Iliad and the Odyssey, monumental epics attributed to him, stand as foundational texts in the canon of ancient Greek and by extension, Western literature. According to tradition, Homer was a wandering blind singer or bard whose knowledge of war and the seas seemed almost divine. His very name was already in antiquity explained as a derivation of Home Horon, meaning the one who does not see, a label that seemed to confirm his blindness. Some scholars now believe that he simply closed his eyes whenever he told a story, and that this habit earned him the surname, the Blind Bard. Yet for all the certainty with which we speak his name, the truth is far less clear. In fact, almost everything about Homer, his birthplace, his era, even his existence itself, remains shrouded in uncertainty. The question of who or what Homer really was has puzzled scholars for centuries. Was he a single historical individual who composed both the Iliad and the Odyssey, or was Homer a convenient label attached to the collected works of generations of anonymous poets? The so-called Homeric Question emerged in earnest during the 18th and 19th centuries, when philologists began to scrutinize the language, style, and content of the Iliad and the Odyssey. They noticed differences in vocabulary, narrative technique, and even theological perspectives between these two epics. Could a single poet have created both? Or did these works gradually evolve over centuries of oral tradition, only to be stitched together later by editors and scribes who gave them the illusion of singular authorship? Modern scholarship leans towards the latter. The work of researchers has demonstrated that the epics bear the unmistakable marks of oral composition, formulaic phrases, recurring epithets, and repeated narrative patterns designed to aid memory and performance. It was proven that much of the language in the Iliad and the Odyssey is made up of fixed expressions like rosy-fingered Dawn or swift-footed Achilles, which appear precisely in the same form dozens or even hundreds of times in the epics. Such formulas are not the stylistic quirks of a single poet, but a practical tool for oral storytellers who needed to improvise lengthy verses without written aids. Further evidence comes from the inconsistencies and contradictions within the texts themselves. There are passages that seem to have been assembled from older sources that do not always agree with each other, suggesting that different versions of the stories were combined over time. For example, different parts of the Iliad offer varying accounts of how Achilles' quarrel with Agamemnon unfolds, or how certain heroes meet their deaths. Similarly, the Odyssey includes episodes like the encounter with the Sirens that feel almost like separate folktales inserted into the main narrative. Linguistic analysis also suggests that the poems contain layers of dialect and vocabulary drawn from different periods and regions of ancient Greek. This patchwork quality implies that what we now call Homer was in fact a vast, evolving corpus shaped by countless voices over centuries, before finally being fixed in written form sometime around the 8th or 7th century BCE. If this is true, then Homer was less of an author in a modern sense of the word, but more of a final voice in a long line of iodoi, oral poets who shaped, refined, and transmitted these stories until they were committed to writing. The name Homer became the symbol of this tradition, an emblem of collective memory rather than an individual biography. And in that sense, the mystery of Homer is not merely a puzzle about one man, but a window into the way cultures remember, adapt, and retell their greatest stories. And yet, even if Homer was not a solitary genius, the persona attributed to him has exercised a magnetic pull on the imagination. The idea of a blind bard who sang the birth of Western literature is itself a potent myth, a testament to the human need to anchor great works to a single, comprehensible figure. Whether he was an individual, a collective tradition, or something in between, Homer's name became the seal of cultural authority. Why does this uncertainty still matter? because it reminds us that the foundations of our literary heritage are far more fluid and collective than we often acknowledge. The epics endure not because of one man's brilliance alone, but because they embody centuries of shared memory, performance, and belief. To question the reality of Homer is not to diminish his achievement, but to recognize the vast and anonymous chorus of voices that shape the stories we still read today. In that sense, Homer, real or imagined, remains an essential figure precisely because he is and will always be an enigma.